Hi, Stephen from Owner Discount. Now, BenQ sent me their 32-inch 4K HDR monitor to review. It is available for $650 on Amazon, and I'll put a link in the description for you. Now, HDR is high dynamic range, and it shows a greater range of colors versus standard dynamic range. It uses a 10-bit color depth, and for true HDR, a panel should provide at least 1000 nits of brightness. Now, this is a VA panel, and it tops out at 310 nits, and it is LED edge lit. It has a resolution of 3840 by 2160 and a 95% DCI P3 wide color gamut. It is ideal for content creators. Now, this spec exceeds sRGB, and indeed it was the most color accurate display I have used, with an Adobe RGB of 90%. It has anti-flicker technology, and indeed I saw no flicker in my test. Now, although it's not a gaming panel, it does support FreeSync with a range of 24 to 60 Hz. If you have an AMD graphics card, you can take advantage of this and low frequency compensation, which eliminates tearing even at low frame rates. Now, some games like Battlefield 1 support HDR and helps show more details in the shadow areas. Here I'm using an RTX 2080 with high detail, so bear that in mind should you play at 4K. When you unpack it, you get a USB cable for video, a mini DisplayPort to full-size DisplayPort cable, and a power cable. Now, it is good to see that there is no power brick, which does save space under your desk. You also get a CD, which has the drivers and a manual on it. Connecting the stand is simple. You just slot it in place and screw it in. Now, the ports are underneath, which makes it very awkward if, like me, you do change things quite regularly. But I can see it. If you use the VESA mount and attach it to the wall, it does make sense. Although personally, I would like to see the ports on the side. You have two HDMI 2.0s, a DisplayPort 1.4, a USB-C for video input only, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. No daisy chaining monitors here. The monitor does have two 2-watt speakers, which are fine for general use, but I would recommend hooking up some speakers to the 3.5mm audio jack. The placement of this jack is not ideal should you use headphones, as the cable will get in the way of your keyboard. The depth of the stand is about 8.5 inches, so it doesn't take up too much desk space, and its height is about 20.5 inches. The front of the stand is actually made of plastic, but the base itself is steel, and it is very solid. You can tilt it back 15 degrees and forward by 5 degrees. There's no sideways pivot or vertical adjustment, nor is there any means to have it in portrait mode. It is meant to stay put, with little to no change in ports or adjustment. It does have an anti-glare coating on the screen, but unfortunately it does not cope well with light shining on it. Now, there is no joystick to adjust its controls, but you do have 5 buttons which are underneath. What I do like is the large control menu that pops up, so there's no need to remember which buttons do what. I also like the large and clear list of options that show up as well. To the right, you have a separate button that enables HDR emulation for non-HDR footage, and also a brightness intelligence button. Now, there is a light sensor on the panel, and when you have BI turned on, it tells the monitor what the room lighting conditions are like, and it adjusts the color temperature and brightness of the display accordingly. Now, this definitely helps with eye strain, and I found that the HDR emulation to be pretty good at enhancing those details. Looking at the options, you have a low blue light mode. You can adjust this for multimedia, for web surfing, for office work, and for reading. In picture mode, you have the standard mode, you have regular HDR, you have cinema HDR that makes the blacks blacker, you have game mode, photo, sRGB, REC 709, Eco, and MBook. You can change the input source as well. Now, if you are in non-HDR mode, you can change various picture settings, but if you are in HDR mode, you only restrict it to sharpness and AMA. Now, AMA is the overdrive function, and this, for gaming, I recommend you stick to the high settings here versus the premium, as you definitely see less ghosting. HDR definitely brightens up the image versus standard, while Cinema HDR enhances the blacks. They are probably the 3 main settings that you're likely to use. It does have a smart focus option, which puts a focused rectangle in the center of the display. You can either have it small or large. Now, perhaps this is useful if you want to focus your attention to some details in the center of your screen. Now in Windows 10, you can set the display settings to use HDR all of the time. Now I really recommend do not do this, as it increases artifacts in the dark areas. You are much better off turning that off and using the settings which are on the monitor. As an office worker, I also found it very useful to have multiple windows open and taking advantage of the high resolution and large real estate with which to work with. So who is this panel for? Well, if you're into increased productivity and do any content creation work, the high resolution and great color accuracy with good HDR, it does represent great value at $650. Now, if you are a casual gamer, it is also pretty good. And to get the most out of it, I do recommend using an AMD video card to enable FreeSync and LFC. Now, of course, if you are a gamer first and a content creator second, you may want to opt for a higher refresh panel, which has also less pixels to push. I'd like to thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.